Chapter 4: Changing the Rules. High Delegate Kayla did not disappear from Earth. That would have been impossible. Too many people knew she was there. Too many governments had meetings scheduled. Too many scientists, diplomats, military officers, and journalists were already watching the First Contact Initiative. Marcus had no intention of trying to hide the obvious. Instead, he intended to make everything beneath the obvious unreliable. Her public schedule would remain. Her speeches would remain. Her diplomatic responsibilities would remain. Where she slept would change. How she traveled would change. Who knew those details would change most of all? The assassins could keep the schedule. Marcus wanted everything between the printed lines. Richard understood the distinction almost immediately. Ralvek took longer. Not because he failed to understand Marcus's reasoning. Because he disliked it. Strongly. The four of them stood inside a service elevator descending toward the facility's transportation level. Kira sat between Marcus and Kayla, seemingly unconcerned by the increasingly tense discussion happening above her. Ralvek folded his arms. "You are proposing that High Delegate Kayla continue her diplomatic schedule while abandoning the established security plan." Marcus shook his head. "No." Ralvek's ears shifted slightly. Marcus continued. "I'm proposing we keep the parts that work. And discard the remainder." "Yes. That is abandoning the plan." Selectively. Ralvek stared at him. Marcus stared back. Kayla watched both of them. Finally, Ralvek asked, "Do humans commonly solve disagreements by redefining words?" Richard answered before Marcus could. "Constantly." Kayla's muzzle curved. Marcus glanced toward Richard. "You're not helping. I've worked with you too long to believe that's my role." The elevator continued downward. Ralvek's tail moved once. "Then explain precisely what you intend to retain." Marcus appreciated the wording. "Not defend your plan. Not convince me. Explain it." Professional disagreement. He could work with that. "The outer security structure remains." Marcus counted points on his fingers. "Public venues remain screened. Human and Leakin security remain integrated. Scheduled personnel continue their assignments. Medical support stays available. Communications stay encrypted." Ralvek nodded after each item. Marcus continued. "What changes are the movements closest to Kayla?" "Transportation." "Yes." "Private accommodations." "Yes." "Meal preparation." "Definitely." "Personal staff." Marcus paused. "Reduced." Ralvek's expression hardened. "Her staff are loyal." "I didn't say otherwise." "Then why remove them?" "Because loyalty doesn't make someone invisible." Ralvek's ears slowly rose. Marcus continued. "Every person who knows a location becomes one more place information can leak from. That doesn't mean they're traitors. Their communicator can be compromised. Their schedule can be observed. They can be followed. Someone can overhear them." Kayla spoke quietly. "Or threaten their families." Marcus looked at her. Yes. The word hung there. No one joked. The elevator doors opened. A plain concrete vehicle bay waited beyond. No flags. No ceremonial carpet. No diplomatic convoy. One maintenance truck. Two ordinary passenger vehicles. A delivery van. And an aging blue utility vehicle with scratches down one side. Richard pointed toward the last one. "There." Kayla stared. Ralvek stared longer. Marcus smiled. "Perfect." Ralvek looked at him. "You cannot be serious." "Very." The vehicle had 4 doors, raised suspension, roof racks, and enough accumulated wear to suggest its best years had occurred well before humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. Kayla walked slowly around it. "This is government transportation?" Richard coughed. "Technically." Marcus opened the rear door. Inside were tool cases, folded work blankets, emergency equipment, and the lingering scent of machine oil. Kayla looked at him. "What does technically mean?" Marcus glanced toward Richard. Richard sighed. "It belongs to facilities maintenance." Kayla stared at the vehicle again. Ralvek said nothing. His silence had become dangerous. Marcus inspected the tires. "Good tread." Ralvek finally spoke. "No." Marcus looked up. "No, no. Any specific objection?" Ralvek extended one arm toward the vehicle. All of it. Kayla covered her muzzle. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That's reasonably comprehensive. Ralvek stepped closer. My High Delegate will not be transported through an unsecured human city inside a maintenance vehicle. It won't be unsecured. Where's the escort? There isn't one. No. Commander. No. Marcus straightened. The humor left his expression. Ralvek noticed immediately. So we're clear, Marcus said. A convoy tells everyone who matters where she is. A convoy provides armor and firepower. It also creates a target. It discourages attack. Has it? Ralvek stopped. Marcus didn't press the advantage. He didn't need to. The commander had lost people. They both knew it. Marcus softened his voice. I'm not asking you to abandon security. That is precisely what it feels like. I know. Ralvek studied him. Marcus continued. I'm asking you to stop looking protected. That landed differently. Kayla watched Ralvek think. Marcus pointed toward the battered vehicle. Nobody watching the diplomatic entrance expects her to leave in that. He pointed toward the service exit. Nobody monitoring scheduled transportation knows when we're leaving. Then toward himself. You drive. Ralvek blinked. I drive. Yes. Why? Because nobody knows you can. Ralvek stared at him. Kayla's ears lifted. Richard turned away suspiciously quickly. The commander narrowed his eyes. You find this amusing? Marcus maintained a perfectly neutral expression. Not at all. You do. Maybe a little. Kayla laughed. Ralvek looked toward her. High Delegate. She composed herself. I apologize. You do not. No. I can tell. Yes. Ralvek sighed. The arrangement changed. Ralvek would drive. Marcus would sit in the front passenger seat. Kayla and Kira would occupy the rear. Richard would leave separately using the scheduled government vehicle. The official convoy would depart 15 minutes later. Empty except for security personnel. Marcus inspected the utility vehicle himself. Undercarriage. Will Wells. Engine compartment. Cabin. Storage space. Fuel. Emergency systems. He found nothing concerning. Ralvek watched him. You trust the vehicle? No. Ralvek's ears flattened. Marcus closed the hood. I verified what I can. That is different? Completely. The commander considered the distinction. Then nodded. Agreed. Before they departed, Dr. Chen contacted Marcus. He answered from beside the vehicle. Chen. We have more on the compound. Marcus glanced toward Kayla. She heard the conversation through her translator. Go ahead. It isn't immediately toxic. Immediately? We exposed isolated Leakin colony samples to controlled concentrations. Marcus's expression hardened. You already had samples? Voluntary research samples. Provided weeks ago. Continue. Chen hesitated. The compound reduces regenerative response. Ralvek stepped closer. How much? At the concentrations detected in the supplement, perhaps 20 to 30% initially. Kayla's eyes narrowed. And with repeated exposure? We don't know yet. Marcus asked, would Kayla have noticed? Probably not. Symptoms. Possibly mild fatigue. Increased recovery time. Nothing obvious at first. Marcus looked toward the concrete floor. The idea rearranged itself. Not poison. Preparation. He hated being right. What happens if she's injured while it's active? Chen's answer came quietly. Her colony would still function. A pause. But not as efficiently. Ralvek's lips pulled back slightly. Not quite a snarl. Marcus understood. Someone hadn't necessarily intended lunch to kill Kayla. They might have intended lunch to make the next attack work better. Kayla spoke. Dr. Chen. Yes, High Delegate. Could the compound occur naturally? It contains naturally occurring structures. Chen hesitated. But the arrangement is unusual. Meaning, we can't prove it was designed. Marcus appreciated the precision. Kayla did too. But you suspect it. Yes. Kayla's ears lowered. Thank you for saying only what you know. Chen sounded relieved. Of course. Marcus added, keep the analysis compartmentalized. Director Morgan already approved it. Who knows? For people in the laboratory. Morgan. Richard. You. Marcus looked toward Kayla and Ralvek. And them. 9 total. Keep it there. I will. The connection ended. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Kayla looked toward Marcus. You were correct. He didn't ask about what. The food was preparation. Marcus shook his head. Maybe. She gave him an exasperated look. He almost smiled. Fine. Probably. Progress. Don't get used to it. Ralvek opened the driver's door. I am reconsidering my objection. Marcus walked toward the passenger side. To the vehicle? No. Ralvek looked back toward the diplomatic facility. To being predictable. Marcus nodded. That was enough. They left through a service tunnel 7 minutes later. No ceremony. No escort. No announcement. A scratched maintenance vehicle simply rolled through a checkpoint and joined ordinary traffic. Kayla watched the diplomatic complex disappear behind industrial buildings. For the first time since arriving on Earth, nobody outside the vehicle knew exactly where she was. The sensation was strange. She expected vulnerability. Instead, she felt relief. Kira sat beside her, watching traffic pass through the window. Kayla rested one hand lightly along the dog's shoulders. Kira allowed it. Marcus noticed through the side mirror. Said nothing. Ralvek drove carefully. Too carefully. Marcus lasted 6 minutes. Commander. What? You can go faster. I am obeying your traffic laws. You're doing 10 under. I prefer caution. A car passed them. Then another. Then a delivery truck. Marcus looked toward the speed display. We're attracting attention. Ralvek stared straight ahead. By driving safely, humans find that suspicious. Kayla laughed from the back seat. Ralvek glanced in the mirror. Is he joking? Marcus answered. Mostly. Mostly? Drive the speed limit. Ralvek increased speed. Marcus nodded. Better. The commander muttered something in Leakin. The translator rendered it as absurd species. Marcus smiled. Translator working well. Ralvek's ears flattened. Kayla laughed harder. The city unfolded around them. Kayla had already seen human cities. From diplomatic transports. Through armored windows. From secure platforms. This was different. They stopped at traffic lights. People crossed in front of them carrying bags. A child held one parent's hand while pointing excitedly toward an aircraft overhead. Construction workers ate beside an unfinished building. A woman walked 2 small dogs along a sidewalk. Kira noticed them immediately. Her ears rose. Kayla followed her gaze. Relatives. Marcus looked back. No. Kira continued watching. She disagrees. Marcus smiled. She thinks every dog is worth investigating. The light changed. Ralvek accelerated. Kayla continued looking outside. No one knew who she was. No crowd. No cameras pointed toward her. No officials waiting to hear something profound. Just people. Living. She found herself fascinated. What is that? Marcus followed her gaze. A large roadside sign displayed a cartoon lumberjack holding something covered in cheese. A restaurant. What does the sign mean? Marcus read it. Then paused. Kayla noticed. You do not wish to translate it. The translator already did. The device rendered the slogan. Burgers so good you'll slap your grandma. Kayla stared at Marcus. Ralvek's ears slowly turned backward. Marcus looked out the windshield. It's an expression. Kayla waited. It means the food is very good. Why would excellent food result in violence against an elderly relative? It wouldn't. Then why? I don't know. Kayla's eyes narrowed. You are human. Unfortunately, they did not consult me. Ralvek spoke without looking away from the road. Perhaps humanity's diplomats deliberately withheld this information. Marcus nodded. National security. Kayla laughed again. The translator rendered words. It didn't always render humanity. Marcus realized that might take considerably longer. Their destination wasn't secret in the traditional sense. It was simply ordinary. A small government-owned residence used occasionally by visiting technical personnel. No perimeter walls. No guard towers. No permanent security team. 2 bedrooms. Small kitchen. Detached garage. Residential neighborhood. Children's bicycles lay in one neighboring driveway. Someone across the street was cutting grass. Kayla looked from the house to Marcus. This is the secure location. For tonight. Ralvek parked. There is no defensive perimeter. Marcus opened his door. Yes. No hardened entrance. No. No visible surveillance. Correct. Ralvek stared at the house. This troubles me considerably. Marcus stepped out. Good. Ralvek looked at him over the roof. Why is that good? Because anyone planning to attack you would have chosen somewhere else. Marcus didn't enter immediately. He walked. One circuit of the property. Kira accompanied him. Kayla watched from inside the vehicle. Marcus examined windows. Fence. Adjacent homes. Roof access. Utility connections. Rear alley. Street. Cars. People. Nothing dramatic. He looked like a man considering whether to buy a house. Only the pattern of his eyes revealed otherwise. Kayla watched Kira parallel him. Not perfectly. Independently. Sometimes the German Shepherd examined something Marcus ignored. Sometimes Marcus stopped because Kira did. Partners. She finally understood. Not handler and animal. Not owner and pet. Family, certainly. But operationally. Partners. Marcus returned. Clear enough. Ralvek stepped out. Enough. Nothing is clear. You have a deeply unsatisfying manner of speaking. I've been told. Kayla emerged. A neighbor looked across the street. An elderly human man holding a garden hose. He saw Kayla. The hose slowly lowered. His mouth opened. Marcus watched him. The man's expression shifted through confusion. Disbelief. Then absolute fascination. Kayla froze. Marcus sighed. Well. Ralvek looked toward him. Our secrecy has failed. No. Marcus watched the neighbor. We were never hiding that she's leakin'. The old man remained motionless. Then he lifted one hand. And waved. Kayla blinked. After a moment, she waved back. The man's face broke into a huge smile. He called across the street. Welcome to Earth. Kayla's ears lifted. Thank you. The translator amplified nothing. It didn't need to. The man gave her a thumbs up. Then resumed watering his flowers. Ralvek stared. Marcus opened the front door. Threat assessment complete. Ralvek looked toward the neighbor. You assessed him? Yes. And? Marcus glanced back. His azaleas are in serious danger. Kayla laughed as she entered the house. The house smelled faintly of disinfectant and furniture that nobody used often. Marcus disliked it immediately. Temporary places had no personality. Nothing accumulated. Nothing revealed routine. Usually that was useful. At the moment, it made him aware of how far he was from Fort Hale. Kira investigated every room. Marcus let her. Ralvek began checking windows. Kayla stood in the living room. There was one couch. 2 chairs. A small television. A bookshelf containing 6 outdated travel guides and a maintenance manual for an appliance that no longer existed. She picked up one book. Michigan Wilderness Trails. Marcus noticed. Coincidence. Kayla looked at him. I said nothing. You were going to. I was. She opened the book. Photographs of forests filled the pages. Lakes. Pines. Snow. Rocky shoreline. Something about the landscape caught her attention. This is where you live. Same region. She turned another page. Dense woodlands surrounding a lake beneath autumn colors. It is beautiful. Marcus looked at the photograph. Yes. A simple answer. But Kayla noticed something behind it. Not pride. Attachment. She closed the book. Do you miss it? Marcus glanced toward Kira. She had finished checking the kitchen and moved upstairs. Sometimes. You've only been gone one day. Still counts. Kayla smiled. Ralvek returned from the rear of the house. Windows are unacceptable. Marcus looked toward him. How? Too many. It's a house. Precisely. Marcus nodded. I've noticed houses tend to have windows. Ralvek refused to acknowledge the joke. We need external surveillance. Minimal. Motion sensors. Yes. Overlapping observation. Yes. Ralvek stopped. You agree? Of course. The commander stared at him suspiciously. Marcus looked confused. What? I expected an argument. I only argue when you're wrong. Kayla lowered the book. Ralvek's tail flicked. An extraordinary statement. Marcus smiled. Thank you. It was not praise. Still counts. By evening, the temporary residence had changed. Not visibly. That mattered. 2 discrete sensors watched the rear approach. A camera covered the front without changing the appearance of the house. Ralvek and Marcus established overlapping watches. Richard arranged food through 3 separate sources. No single supplier provided an entire meal. Kayla objected when she learned why. Not because of inconvenience. Because other people were being inconvenienced on her behalf. Marcus listened. Then ignored the objection. She noticed. Marcus. Yes. I said this was unnecessary. I heard you. And? I disagreed. Kayla stared. You do that frequently. Occupational hazard. Dinner was simple. Grilled meat. Vegetables. Bread. Nothing ceremonial. No photographers. No aides. No speeches. The 4 of them ate around a table meant for 6. Kira rested beside Marcus. For perhaps 20 minutes, nobody discussed assassination attempts. Ralvek asked about human military training. Marcus asked about the trial of the wilds. Kayla explained that every Leakin completed it before adulthood. Marcus stopped eating. Everyone. Yes. Royal family? Yes. Politicians. Kayla's ears moved with amusement. Yes. Accountants. Ralvek answered. Yes. Marcus leaned back. That explains some things. Kayla tilted her head. What things? You don't separate survival from ordinary life. Ralvek looked interested. Humans do. Mostly. Marcus thought about it. We specialize. Kayla nodded. So do we. Not the same way. He pointed toward Ralvek. Soldier. Then Kayla. Diplomat. Then himself. Professional paranoia. Kayla smiled. I recognized human profession? Very exclusive. Ralvek almost laughed. Marcus continued. But both of you know how to survive alone in wilderness. Kayla nodded. It is considered part of adulthood. Marcus thought of teenagers he'd seen unable to cook without automated kitchen systems. Interesting. Ralvek asked, would humans struggle with the trial? Some. Marcus took another bite. Others would treat it as vacation. Kayla smiled. You? Marcus shrugged. Depends whether I can bring coffee. The conversation lasted long after the plates were empty. Culture. Family. Forests. Human military doctrine. Leakin traditions. Nothing deeply personal. Not yet. But the walls between unfamiliar species became thinner. Kayla began understanding Marcus's humor. Marcus learned that Kayla's ears revealed irritation approximately half a second before her voice did. Ralvek discovered that humans frequently insulted people they genuinely liked. He found this deeply confusing. Kira discovered that Kayla occasionally dropped pieces of meat. Marcus suspected this was not accidental. He chose not to investigate. Some threats were beyond even Hades. Later, Marcus stood by the front window. The neighborhood had gone quiet. Streetlights painted pale circles on the pavement. Kayla approached without ceremony. You were right. Marcus continued watching outside. About? I needed this. He looked toward her. This house. No. She gestured vaguely around them. Normality. Marcus nodded. He understood that better than most. Kayla moved beside the window. Today someone attempted to weaken my colony. Marcus said nothing. Someone may have prepared another attack inside one of the most secure diplomatic facilities on Earth. Still nothing. And yet, she looked toward the neighboring house. Through its window, a human family sat together watching television. People are simply living. Marcus followed her gaze. That's what we're protecting. Kayla looked down at him. Not her. Not the negotiations. Not governments. That? Families eating dinner. Children riding bicycles. An old man watering flowers. People who would never know how close strangers came to deciding their futures for them. Kayla's expression softened. Yes. Marcus looked back toward the street. Then tomorrow you go back to work. She blinked. You intend to allow that? Marcus glanced up. Allow. Her ears rose. His expression remained perfectly neutral. I protect diplomats. He looked toward her. I don't own them. Kayla held his gaze. Something important passed between them. Respect. Not obedience. Not dependence. Respect. Thank you, she said. Marcus nodded. Don't thank me yet. Why? Tomorrow is going to be unpleasant. Kayla's ears tilted. Assassins. No. He picked up a tablet from the windowsill. Your schedule says you have 6 hours of economic negotiations. Kayla stared at him. Marcus gave her a sympathetic look. I'd rather take the assassins. She laughed loudly enough that Ralvek called from the kitchen. What happened? Kayla answered without looking away from Marcus. Nothing. Marcus smiled. For once. That was true. Morning began with a problem Marcus had not anticipated. Kayla wanted coffee. Not because she liked it. Because Marcus did. He discovered this when he entered the kitchen shortly after sunrise and found her standing over the coffee maker with the concentration of someone defusing an explosive. Kira sat nearby, watching, judging. Marcus stopped in the doorway. Kayla glanced toward him. I believe your machine is malfunctioning. Marcus looked at the coffee maker, then at the untouched controls. What did it do? Nothing. Did you turn it on? Kayla looked at the machine, then back at him. No. Marcus nodded. That'll do it. Her ears lowered. I was studying it. Of course. He moved beside her. The dangerous part is usually the button. Kayla gave him a look. Marcus pressed it. The machine came alive. She stared at him. Remarkable. I've had extensive training. Kira's tail thumped once against the floor. Kayla looked down. She does not believe you. She's known me longer. Ralvek entered moments later, fully dressed and already carrying a security tablet. He stopped when he saw Kayla beside the coffee maker. Hi, Delegate. Kayla looked toward him. Commander. Ralvek's gaze moved to Marcus. Then to the coffee machine. What is happening? Marcus answered. Diplomatic outreach. Kayla nodded solemnly. I am learning human ritual. Ralvek looked deeply suspicious. The day's schedule had changed. Not publicly. Officially, Kayla would still attend economic negotiations at the diplomatic complex beginning at 9. Unofficially, Marcus had split her transport into 3 stages. The utility vehicle took them only halfway. A civilian shuttle carried them through a commercial terminal. The final leg used an ordinary government transport assigned to a completely different department. Ralvek disliked every stage. He admitted this repeatedly. Marcus considered that encouraging. Complacency worried him more than complaints. Kayla watched the city pass beneath the shuttle. Morning traffic flowed through layered transit corridors. Ground vehicles below. Local aircraft above. Public transport moving between them. Human cities were denser than Leaken ones. Louder. More vertical. Less patient. Yet somehow alive in a way she was beginning to appreciate. Marcus sat beside the aisle. Kira lay between his feet. Ralvek sat across from them, pretending he was not evaluating every passenger. Kayla leaned toward Marcus. How many people on the shuttle know who I am? Marcus glanced around. Everyone. She blinked. Everyone. You're 8 feet tall and covered in fur. Kayla looked around. Several passengers were indeed trying not to stare. One child had abandoned all pretense and was openly watching her from 3 rows away. Kayla smiled at the child. The child's eyes widened. Then she hid behind her mother. Marcus watched. Terrifying. Kayla looked at him. I smiled. Exactly. She nudged him lightly with one elbow. Marcus almost shifted out of the seat. He looked at her. Kayla immediately withdrew. My apologies. Marcus rubbed his arm. You're stronger than you think. Ralvek answered without looking up from his tablet. No. Marcus glanced toward him. She knows exactly how strong she is. Kayla's ears tilted. Marcus nodded. Good to know. The negotiations began precisely on time. Marcus hated them almost immediately. Not because they were poorly conducted, because they were economic negotiations. 6 representatives from humanity, 4 from the Leakin Crown, 2 neutral observers, 3 legal specialists. Enough financial projections to weaponize boredom. Marcus sat against the rear wall. Kira rested beneath his chair. Ralvek stood near the opposite entrance. Kayla sat at the center of the Leakin delegation. For nearly an hour, Marcus watched her work. That changed his opinion. Kayla wasn't merely competent. She was exceptionally good. She listened longer than she spoke. Asked questions that forced people to clarify what they actually wanted. Refused vague language. Never raised her voice. Never surrendered a point simply to avoid discomfort. When a human trade representative attempted to bury a restriction inside 12 minutes of technical terminology, Kayla waited until he finished. Then she asked, "Does that mean Leakin manufacturers would require human certification to sell equipment on Earth?" The representative hesitated. Under certain circumstances. Kayla's ears moved forward. Which circumstances? The man looked toward his legal advisor. Marcus smiled faintly. Got you. 10 minutes later, the wording had been rewritten. During the second hour, Marcus stopped thinking of her as a protected principal. Not entirely. That responsibility never left. But he began seeing the person beneath the title. Kayla carried the room without dominating it. She remembered names, not titles. When a junior analyst provided a useful correction, she thanked him directly. When one of her own advisors interrupted a human delegate unnecessarily, she stopped him with a glance. No humiliation. No performance. Just discipline. Marcus understood why people followed her. Kira stirred. Marcus looked down. The German shepherd's head rose. Not toward the door. Toward the ventilation grill. Marcus's attention sharpened. Kira sniffed. Once. Twice. Then stood. Marcus stood with her. Ralvek saw him immediately. The commander moved one hand toward his communicator. Marcus gave a tiny downward gesture. Wait. The negotiations continued. Nobody else noticed. Kira moved 2 steps toward the wall. Her nose lifted. Marcus followed. Airflow. Nothing smelled unusual to him. But Kira wasn't reacting strongly. Curiosity. Not alarm. Marcus crouched beside the grill. A faint metallic smell. Cleaning compound. Maybe. He glanced toward the ceiling. Environmental system showed normal status. Of course it did. He touched his communicator. Richard. A whisper answered. Go. Who serviced conference room 7 this morning? Checking. Marcus watched the room. Kayla never stopped speaking. She had noticed him. He knew because one ear had turned toward his position. But she continued negotiating. Good. Richard returned. Cleaning crew at 6:10. Names. Sending. Marcus received 3 identities. All regular staff. All verified present. HVAC. Routine inspection 3 days ago. Any maintenance today? No. Marcus looked at Kira. She sniffed again. Then relaxed. Whatever interested her was fading. Marcus sat back down. Ralvek remained alert. Kayla continued as though nothing happened. 20 minutes later, the session paused. Kayla walked directly toward Marcus. What was it? No idea. Ralvek joined them. That is not reassuring. Marcus looked down at Kira. She noticed something in the air. Kayla's ears lowered. Compound? Probably not. Why? No physical reaction. He looked toward Ralvek. Breathing normal. Eyes normal. No agitation. Ralvek nodded. Marcus continued. Could have been cleaning residue. Kayla folded her arms. You stopped the entire room in your mind over cleaning residue. Yes. Yet you allowed the meeting to continue. Yes. She stared. Marcus shrugged. You were doing well. For half a second, Kayla said nothing. Then, that was almost a compliment. Richard approached carrying a tablet. We found the source. Marcus looked toward him. Already? One of the cleaning staff used a metal polish on the ventilation cover this morning. Marcus nodded. Different product? New supplier. Kira looked toward Richard. Marcus scratched behind her ears. Good catch. Kayla watched him. So she detected a harmless chemical change. Yes. And you took it seriously. Yes. Kayla nodded slowly. I understand why you brought her. Marcus looked down. She understands why I brought me. Kira's tail wagged. Ralvak shook his head. The second half of negotiations went less smoothly. Not because of security. Because diplomacy worked that way. Human representatives wanted access to Leakin materials science. Leakin representatives wanted safeguards against uncontrolled military adaptation. Human manufacturers wanted licensing. Leakin officials wanted joint oversight. Everyone wanted cooperation. Nobody agreed on what cooperation should cost. Kayla spent 3 hours untangling language that hid fear beneath economics. Marcus recognized the pattern. Different profession. Same problem. People rarely argued about what they said they were arguing about. Near the end of the session, one human delegate leaned back. So the Crown's position is that certain technologies should remain restricted because humanity is too immature to use them responsibly? The room went quiet. The wording was deliberate. Provocative. Kayla's ears rose. Marcus watched. She didn't react emotionally. Instead, she folded her hands. No. The delegate waited. Kayla continued. The Crown's position is that technologies capable of altering the military balance of multiple star systems should not be distributed without mutual safeguards. The man smiled thinly. That sounds remarkably similar. Kayla's voice remained calm. Then allow me to make the distinction clearer. Every eye turned toward her. We do not distrust humanity because you are young. A pause. We distrust unrestricted power because every civilization is capable of misusing it. The human delegate stopped smiling. Kayla continued. Mine included. Silence. Marcus felt the room change. Not victory. Respect. Kayla leaned forward slightly. If our positions were reversed, I would expect humanity to require the same safeguards from us. The delegate studied her, then nodded once. Fair. The discussion resumed. Marcus smiled. Very good. Afterward, they walked through a secure corridor toward a private lift. Kayla looked tired. This time Marcus understood the difference. Not the exhaustion he'd seen in her photograph. Just work. Healthy fatigue. She caught him looking. What? Nothing. You were evaluating me. I do that. I've noticed. They entered the elevator. Ralvak selected the lower level. Kayla leaned against the wall. Did I survive the economic negotiations? Marcus considered. Barely. She smiled. And you? I've been through worse. Ralvak looked toward him. Combat. Marcus shook his head. Tax audits. Kayla laughed. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. Nobody moved. A maintenance worker stood outside. Human male. Gray uniform. Tool case. Badge visible. Perfectly ordinary. Marcus looked at the badge. Then at the man's face. Something didn't match. Not appearance. Behavior. The worker looked at Kayla first. That was normal. Most people did. Then Ralvak. Also normal. Then Marcus. And immediately looked away. Too quickly. Marcus stepped forward. Morning. The worker nodded. Sir. What are you fixing? The man lifted the tool case slightly. Lift diagnostics. Marcus glanced at the elevator display. No fault indicator. Preventative service. Work order. The man reached toward his belt. Ralvak moved. Marcus moved first. The maintenance worker's hand changed direction. Not toward a tablet. Toward the inside of his jacket. Marcus struck the wrist. Hard. The man's hand opened. A compact weapon dropped halfway free. Ralvak seized the attacker by the shoulder. The human twisted with surprising speed. Marcus drove one forearm across the man's elbow. Bone cracked. The weapon hit the floor. Kayla stepped backward. Not helpless. Creating room. Kira exploded forward. Not at the attacker. At the weapon. She planted herself over it, teeth bared, preventing anyone from reaching it. The attacker slammed his free hand into Ralvak's chest. The Leakin barely moved. His expression changed. The attacker realized his mistake. Too late. Ralvak drove him into the wall. Once. Controlled. Enough to stop resistance. Marcus caught the man's other wrist. Alive. Ralvek growled. I know. The attacker tried to kick. Marcus shifted. The leg missed. Marcus swept the supporting ankle. The man hit the floor. Ralvek pinned him. The entire encounter lasted perhaps 5 seconds. Silence followed. Then alarms began. Marcus hated alarms. Security personnel appeared at both ends of the corridor. Weapons raised. Marcus looked toward them. Don't shoot him. One officer shouted. Hands visible. Marcus looked down at the attacker. Good advice. The man's face twisted in pain. Marcus knelt. Who are you? No answer. Ralvek looked at the badge. Nathan Cole. Marcus went still. Richard arrived seconds later. Saw the badge. Saw Marcus's expression. Oh, hell. Marcus looked toward the maintenance worker. Nathan Cole. Or someone pretending to be him. The same credentials from the previous day. Marcus examined the man's face carefully. Richard pulled up the personnel record. A photograph appeared. Same face. Marcus's eyes narrowed. It is him. Richard nodded. Apparently. Cole laughed weakly. That caught Marcus's attention. Not nervous laughter. Not pain. Something colder. Marcus leaned closer. You called in sick. Cole smiled. No. Marcus stared. Richard looked between them. Cole's smile widened despite the arm Ralvek had pinned behind him. I never called anyone. The corridor became very quiet. Marcus's mind accelerated. The sick call. The stolen credentials. The scanner. The food additive. Environmental tampering. Cole's empty house. His vehicle missing. Now Cole himself. Inside the facility. Carrying a weapon. Too convenient. Far too convenient. Marcus looked toward Richard. Nobody interrogates him alone. Richard nodded. Marcus continued. Full medical screening. Cole's smile vanished. Why? Marcus looked down at him. Because I don't believe you yet. Kayla stepped closer. Ralvek immediately looked back. Hi, Delegate. I'm fine. She looked at Cole. The attacker met her eyes. Something moved across his expression. Hatred? Fear? Marcus couldn't tell. Then Cole spoke. You should have stayed home. Ralvek's claws pressed into the floor. Marcus's voice became quiet. That's enough. Cole looked toward him. No. Marcus leaned closer. Cole smiled again. You don't understand what's coming. Marcus studied him. Not the words. The delivery. He believed them. Or wanted Marcus to believe he did. Either way. Useful. Security restrained Cole properly. Ralvek released him only after 3 officers confirmed control. Marcus retrieved the weapon using evidence gloves. Small. Human manufacture. Modified. One-shot injector mechanism. Not a firearm. Marcus looked toward Richard. Get chin. Richard stared at the device. You think? Marcus nodded. The compound. Kayla's ears lowered. The meal hadn't been the attack. It had been rehearsal. Or perhaps preparation for this. Marcus looked toward Cole as security carried him away. The man said nothing more. That didn't matter. For the first time, they had someone alive. And Marcus intended to learn why.